Hi, I'm Renée Walker, a mindset mentor, speaker, and lover of all things spiritual. I believe that at our core, we are all spiritually wired for love, peace, success, and abundance. Here on the podcast, we're diving into mindset, wellness, and business, but always through a spiritual lens. Let's just say we're going deep, but we're keeping it light. So let's elevate your life from the inside out, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Spiritually Wired. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Spiritually Wired. I am your host, Renée Walker, and today I wanted to start off by sharing something that is deeply personal to me, and that has been the journey of finding my voice. And trust me, it has been a long journey. I felt really guided to share this because I feel like it's so important to have these real conversations. We tend to make assumptions, and, most of the time we just think that other people maybe speaking in front of others comes easily because it may appear that way, but it's not always the case. And I have been such a believer in the more real, the more genuine, the more deep we can go, the more that we actually give permission to other people to maybe move beyond their comfort zone. So as we launch, or as I prepare to launch this podcast, it's been a really interesting exercise in noticing, one, how far I've come in terms of using my voice, but two, how much more I have to go. So this podcast was actually set to launch 4 years ago. I had, with the pandemic, of course, which started so many things for different people. And for me, it really kind of was that push to go into the virtual space. I had been in the virtual space years ago with another company, Mothers on Fire, that I did for years. And because of that experience, I knew just how much work it was. And I was very hesitant to go back into it. But the pandemic kind of changed everything in the sense of we had no choice. And it also, in my case, gave me just the freedom to do it imperfectly. Did not need to have a very fancy studio. I could teach from anywhere. So that was really a blessing. In the process, I started doing these interviews with people, and it was called Wellness Chats with Renée. And I was interviewing different experts in the field of wellness. It was going pretty well. I was getting great feedback, and I thought, okay, let's just turn this into a podcast. So I had my cover art ready. I had my music ready, the intro, outro, trailer episode recorded, all set to go. And then I just decided to pause. It felt at the time like I had so much going on. The business was really kind of thriving. And at the same time, my kids were still at home. They were older, but it was 4 years ago. So at that time, they were a bit younger in the sense that they still needed me more. And I just decided to push the pause button. And again, at the time, that's what I was telling myself, was that there was just too much going on. Now, today, 4 years later, I am sitting here recording this episode from a very different place. And I can see that these past 4 years needed to happen. There's been a lot of healing, hundreds of classes taught and coaching sessions. And so I have evolved personally as a teacher and as a coach. I've done a number of different certifications since then. But as I was feeling more and more ready to bring this podcast to life because I'm like, okay, now is the time. I have the space in my life and I really feel like I am ready to amplify my voice. So to me, it felt like it was going to be an easy thing to do. I've been doing a lot of these things and I was ready to launch 4 years ago. So why wouldn't I be ready now? But for some reason, I could feel like a little bit of that just resistance. And it was there, but I knew that anytime you're going to do something that's out of your comfort zone, you are going to experience fear. And I have become very intimate with fear these past few years. My entire kind of growth in terms of personally on a spiritual level, but also with my work, the work that I do has required facing a lot of fear and making the decision to do it anyway. So there's been a lot of that. So I thought, okay, this is like that normal level fear. It's going to be fine. As I was about to record my first episodes, I had rented this beautiful studio and it was the weekend before. And I'm like, okay, I was all excited. I was sick, but I'm talking about I was throwing up that weekend. And it sort of came out of nowhere. And I mean, yes, it could be a million different things. But at the end of the day, I just knew in that moment that my body was feeling this leveling up, this shift. I could actually feel that I was clearing my throat chakra. It was one of those experiences, and I remember just thinking, wait a second, I thought I was over this. Like, I thought I could check that box off that, yeah, this is something that's bigger and it's going to amplify my voice. But I'm ready, I can do this. So I really sat with that and meditated on it. I'm pretty blessed to have a number of good friends who are coaches. And one of them's like, Renee, have you given yourself the time to be in the space that you are now really getting ready to amplify your voice in a new way? And my answer was no, I hadn't. I just was going through the motions and just thinking, this is fine. I've done this. I'm good. I was about to do this 4 years ago. This is easy. The reality is there's a reason that I didn't do it 4 years ago. And I can see now why. We always gain, it's always through perspective that we gain that new understanding, that new level of awareness. And so in looking back now, I can see that I wasn't ready. A big part of my healing journey has been being okay with being seen and being heard. It may not look that way, but using my voice has always been something that I have struggled with. I was on stage in the sense that I was a dancer when I was younger. I did gymnastics and I was good in that capacity because I was using my body and expressing myself in that way. But when it came to using my own voice, I would always stand back. I mentioned we had a company called Mothers on Fire, and I had that company with 2 other women. I would always want to be the one behind the scenes. I was happy to help other people use their voice and to support them. But I always felt like either I didn't have anything to say or what I had to say wasn't as important. So I can see now how I was always holding myself back in some way. So it's been quite an experience and quite a healing journey to be where I'm at. The other part that I can now see so clearly is that part of finding my voice has been to come out of the spiritual closet. So I love that expression, coming out of the spiritual closet, because I feel like many of us resonate with it. And that is when you feel like you're living, let's say, a double life. There's a part of you that is like so connected spiritually and wants to learn and wants to expand, and to you feel this call, this voice within you always guiding you, and at the same time there's this fear around judgment. And I think today it's easier to be out, if you will. Back in the day when I started my spiritual journey 20 years ago, I still felt like there was a lot of judgment around being, woo-woo. Now it's like cool to be woo-woo. But back in the day, it didn't feel so cool. So there was always a certain amount of editing what I would say in front of other people. I had my core group where I felt like I could be myself and share and be real and go deep. But then with a lot of people, there was a sense of I couldn't fully be myself because I wouldn't fully be accepted. So finding my voice has also come with being willing to be myself fully and to come out of that spiritual closet, if you will. It's come as well with hours of doing it despite the discomfort. And I always say that yoga is really what gave me my voice, because I did my yoga teacher certification about 8 years ago. And when I did it only because I was just obsessed with yoga philosophy and I really wanted to learn more about it. The only places I would find courses on yoga philosophy was in a yoga certification. So I thought, all right, I'll sign up for the whole thing, but really I have no intention of teaching. And part of the certification was to complete 25 hours of karma classes. So we were basically forced to teach. And it was really in that process where I had to teach that I became more and more comfortable. Now, like anything, it's never this linear journey, right? It's always this up and down journey, this windy road of learning and growing, and then kind of feeling like you're taking steps back. But at the same time, when you have that bigger perspective, you can see that you were never taking steps back. It was just you were experiencing periods of more maybe expansion and periods of more contraction. So when now I get ready to really launch this podcast, it is not only about being me, being fully, authentically me, but it does feel like something bigger in the sense of there's no hiding anymore. I'm so aware now of how safety is important in terms of growth. So you need to feel safe in order to heal, in order to expand. And I have had the privilege of growing with first a small group of beautiful friends that have been along this journey for the past 20 years with me, groups of coaches, and that community's only expanded more and more into now a community of students and clients that I've been working with. So feeling safe is so important. And I can see now that launching this podcast, part of why it has been such a a change, if you will, is because it feels unsafe. Not that there's big dangers lurking. And as someone said, you're putting yourself out there on social media. I'm not sure that the podcast is any different, which is so true. But for some reason, the impact and the platform is resonating with me in a way that I know this is part of a leveling up. One of my favorite books that I always recommend clients and students to read is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And the reason I love this book is that he talks about this in terms of your upper limit. And essentially what the upper limit is if you think of your house and your thermostat in your house. So there's a certain setting that you have the heat set at, or the AC, whatever it may be. And our subconscious mind has that same internal setting. And that setting essentially determines the capacity in which you are willing to receive. And that's in all levels. So the capacity in which you're willing to receive love, success, abundance, health, connection, all of that. And the setting is based on experiences that you've had in the past. It's based on childhood. It's based on the environment, that you were raised in, your culture, religion, so many different aspects. And it's set at an unconscious level. So it's not like you have a moment where you're like consciously saying, okay, this is about the level in which I feel comfortable. It's always happening at the unconscious level, which is why focusing on subconscious healing is so incredibly powerful. So this upper limit, right, is essentially kind of that high side of what you have set your capacity to experience certain levels of or different areas in your life. And it can change, it can vary depending on the area. So you can have someone who has a very high capacity to experience deep connection in relationships, but maybe their setting for experiencing success and money may be a bit lower based on experiences they had. So perhaps that person grew up in a very loving home, and so their capacity to experience connection is quite high, but they may have also in that home have grown up with beliefs that money is bad or money is not for good people, or whatever it is that they heard kind of caused them to set that setting of experiencing money lower. So we all have our own areas where maybe we're working on that setting, but first we need to be aware of it. And this is always the first part of any transformation, any healing, is it always starts with awareness. And so I share this because whenever it is that we want to grow, to expand, doesn't matter what area of your life, really bringing awareness to that capacity and looking back and just seeing what are the areas in which maybe you have blocked yourself from receiving or from experiencing certain levels of, again, it can be health, it can be success, it can be money, it can be connections. And that plays out, the subconscious is so wired to protect us. And that is the interesting thing, right? It's wired to protect us. It's not that it's doing a bad thing, but what happens is if, let's say, you are someone that maybe has a low setting for connection, so that's going to impact your relationships. So you're in a relationship, you meet a wonderful person, you're together, and then you start to really connect at a deeper level. And what happens is that at a certain point, your subconscious can start to ring the alarm bell and just say, whoa, this is a little bit too much vulnerability, a little bit too much depth of connection. I think it's time to bring it down a notch here. And that's often when we begin to self-sabotage, to, maybe you pick a fight, or you do something that looking back, you're like, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And that can be your subconscious kind of just doing something so that you can take that step back. We do it in success. So I know for me in business, that's one area that I've been really aware of. It's like I can do something where it's like I experience a certain level of success and it feels great until it starts to feel uncomfortable. And that's when I pull back. And I can see 4 years ago, about to launch the podcast, that was also part of me pulling back, because it was like, okay, maybe this is going to bring a little bit too much abundance. And my subconscious is not ready for this. It doesn't feel safe for this level of eyes on me. And so let's pull back. That's the way that it plays out in our life. So always, when we have that awareness, we have the opportunity to take that step back and to really take an honest look at, where is this coming from? And is this my opportunity to expand? I love the idea of expanding. And Gay Hendricks, again, in The Big Leap, one of the ways in which he says, or he teaches us to move beyond the upper limit, is to every day, like, really repeat the affirmation, I am expanding in my capacity to receive love, success, abundance. And you can choose whatever that is. I always change it for me. So I'm expanding in my capacity to receive or to experience calm. That's another way. We can get so used to living in a body that has a very activated nervous system. And so that becomes also our setting. So we think that we want to experience peace and calm, but we actually don't know how to experience, because our setting is just on a different level. So reaffirming, telling your subconscious mind that it is safe to experience calm, to experience peace, to experience love, to experience abundance, to experience success and connection, is such a powerful way. It's really one of the only ways. And this is the thing with healing, is it's never a one-time thing. I wish it was. I like to pretend sometimes that it is, but it is a constant evolution. There are always different layers, different blocks that we release as we are on this spiritual journey. So I hope this episode serves you in helping to just bring awareness to that capacity to receive. And whether it's whatever area in your life that it is that you're working on, I am so honored to be here with you. And I want to remind you that you are spiritually wired for expansion. It is part of who you are as a soul, is to continuously expand and grow. That's why it doesn't feel good when you feel stuck, when you feel like you're always maybe in the same place. That's one thing I hear from clients, is the word, I just feel stuck. And it doesn't feel good, because we're not meant to be static. We're actually meant to always be evolving. So you are spiritually wired for expansion. Until next time, I am Renée Walker, and this is Spiritually Wired. Thank you for listening to Spiritually Wired. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review. It really makes a big difference for the podcast. And if you're ready to dive deeper and join a soul-led community, come be a part of the Spiritually Wired membership. With weekly life lessons and a rich library of recorded classes, it's designed to support you every step of the way on your spiritual journey. We currently have a special offer where you can receive your first month for half the price. You can find a link in the show notes or come check it out at reneewalkerwellness.com. Until next time, remember to take some deep breaths. Remember that you are spiritually wired.